All right, Daryl, continue.
All right, we got through the hard part. Now we're going to move on to Proclamation 12-07, which is our Wildlife Management Area Hunting Season Proclamation. What I want to do is just, again, go over the major changes that you found that we presented last month and go over them briefly, but there are some that we definitely want to expand upon today. But real briefly, going through Region 1, the major recommendations that came out from last month, we wanted to clarify areas open for small game hunting on Pagoda and Thorny Cypress. Ernest Rice, we're removing one deer muzzleloader hunt. That was all the recommendations for Region 1. In Region 2, we had some recommendations on AEDC, Haynes Bottom, and Laurel Hill. Primarily AEDC, we're closing Unit 1. Unit 1 has some issues with the Air Force needing to do some training, and it has not been open for small game hunting because of the training operations that were being conducted, so we have it closed all of this year. On Haynes Bottom, we'd like to prohibit the horseback riding during the big game hunts for safety issues. And on Laurel Hill, we're increasing raccoon hunting and moving some deer hunts around and changing the antler restriction. That was everything in Region 2. In Region 3 is where we get into some of the I guess, more highly debated recommendations. To start out, one of the things that we did in Region 3 is we are recommending a wild hog control season on 2 of our WMAs, Catoosa Wildlife Management Area as well as Skinner Mountain. The first thing I want to do is expand a little bit on Catoosa and let you know a little bit more about this wild hog control season. This control season was put in place on Catoosa. It's going to be January 7th through the 16th. That 10-day season, I believe it's a 10-day season, it's going to be more opportunity to kill hogs with dogs than they've ever had at Catoosa. So we've definitely increased the opportunities to kill hogs on this area, which is what the agency's ultimate goal is. Prior to today, at last month's meeting, we told you that we were going to have these wild hog control seasons, and in the meantime, we wanted to add a few more regulations that we discussed with our staff that more or less hit right at home on the safety issues of what is going to occur during these wild hog control seasons. First off, the entire area will be open, so it's going to be, we want to put as many dead hogs on the ground as possible, so the entire area is open, no limit either sex. All participants in this wild hog control season must wear blaze orange. We want to, that's definitely a safety issue that we want to enforce. We also wanted to put a little bit of weapon regulations on it to make sure that they're using legal weapons that are legal for deer, bear, or elk. We also needed to clarify the legal hours for this hog control season, and that will be 1/2 hour before sunrise to 1/2 hour after sunset. And we do want, this particular regulation only pertains to Catoosa and not Skinner Mountain, but we do want all the hogs that are killed during this time to be checked out at the check station. We will be manning these check stations at Catoosa and where we pull samples, and we're testing these animals for disease prevalence. And lastly, the small game seasons will be closed during this wild hog control season. Main reason for that, anyone that's wishing to participate in this wild hog control season will not be required to have a big game license. Since wild hogs are no longer big game animals, they're not required to have the license for it. And so since there is the potential of folks going out there and participating without a license, we felt it best to close the small games season during this control season. Does anyone have any questions regarding this measure? No, sir, you do not. And the reason being, since on private lands you do not need any special permits or licenses, we wanted to make sure it was the same in that area as well.
Daryl,
Yes.
the proclamation in our book does not have that last line on the small game season. Will that be added?
No. If you look, we put it under, if you're looking at the proclamation right now, look where it says small game seasons.
Okay.
And it's a last sentence added there because we wanted to make sure a small game hunter would probably read the small game season section. We wanted to make sure he saw it where it interested him. Is it in there? Okay.
I'm slow. So
That's all right. But yes, we definitely moved that one just so the small game hunter would know where to look for it. Okay.
So the only issue of closing small game during the hog eradication effort is because we're concerned about people being there without hunting license? Or is it a safety issue?
I may ask Region 3. Region 3 developed these recommendations for us, and I may ask Region 3 to respond to that.
The answer is yes, safety issue as well as what Daryl described. So that was part of our thinking with that too.
Well, I heard him say that about the license. I just didn't know if you thought it was safety also.
Both.
Okay.
All right. The next issue that we need to talk about regarding wildlife management areas in Region 3 is originally we recommended, and what we did is there was a recommendation that was forwarded to us from the U.S. Forest Service regarding South Cherokee, in particular Tellico and Ocoee bear reserves. There was a recommendation that we simply went by that recommended closing the raccoon season in the bear reserves in that later season in January and February. And if I may add, we continue to bring forward that recommendation and going with what the U.S. Forest Service has recommended. But if I could ask the director to step up and address the commission regarding this. He was in direct contact with the Forest Service on this particular issue.
Thank you, Daryl. Commissioners, after the last meeting, when we talked about this and put forward the regulation, we talked with the Forest Service, and every year, because the Cherokee is managed and owned by the U.S. Forest Service, we're essentially allowed to use that area, and our regulations, of course, need to mesh, and we work together to put forward what those regulations are going to be. When we got the letter from the Forest Service, we asked our personnel, have you seen some of the same things that they outlined in this letter? And the letter referred to things like breeds of dogs that weren't ordinarily used for coon hunting being in the area, excessive number of dogs for what would ordinarily be used for coon hunting, and a number of other problems that our personnel said that they had seen as well. That if we were asked, have we written citations, there have been arrests, and no, there weren't either on those occasions, because essentially, unless we were looking at a bear problem and saw someone illegally take a bear, that was about the only thing we had to stand on. So what we were looking at primarily were indications to us that there was some misuse of the area for valid use of coon hunters. So the regulation was brought forward because it was to protect the bears. The bear reserves were put in place to function as a reserve for bears. And when they go into den, and generally in December, January, February, whatever is typical, because weather patterns cause a lot of variations to when they may do that. But in any case, it was put in place because it was a bear reserve, and that was looking at the resource. That's what we came forward with. Between that meeting and even up until yesterday afternoon, I received any number of phone calls, 3 from the Polk County Commissioner, 3 different commissioners, and 1 from Sheriff Davis from Polk County, all saying that they really didn't understand the regulation was coming forward. One of the letters from the commissioners outlined pretty much point by point what was in the letters that were brought forward to you. For lack of a better word, a rebuttal to that, saying here's what we really think happened. So I began to talk with the Forest Service personnel, and they're certainly here today, can speak for themselves, and I don't mean to do that. So if at the appropriate time, if they'd like to speak, they certainly have that opportunity. But in speaking with the Forest Service, we tried to see if there was a way of changing that regulation that wouldn't impact the bear preserves, and we've had lots of discussions up to that point. So I told the Polk County Commissioners that I would make sure that the letters that they sent were brought before you, and essentially one of them is pretty much just outlining that they would like the regulation changed, and that they feel that raccoon hunting is an important part of that, and that they believe that it wouldn't be misused in the future. The other one is the one I just mentioned to you, where it pretty much goes point by point as in a rebuttal to those things that we brought forward. So I'll just bring those to you, and that I've talked to the leadership there in the Cherokee. We're looking for something that might work other than the full closure. And beyond that, I guess we're open to discussion at this point. And again, I don't know if the Forest Service wants to particularly address it, but if they do, this will certainly be a good opportunity.
Yeah, I want to recognize Mary Miller, who's the biologist for the Cherokee area that we're talking about, Captain David Cadle, and also Officer Philip Earhart, who have come today, driven here, and we appreciate your all's being present. And if anybody wants to make any comments about what got all this started, we'll be glad to hear from you if you want to. Ms. Miller?
No sense in making this drive for nothing, right? Just so long as I get a lifeline too, is that okay? Yeah, we just noticed, the law enforcement officers of both agencies noticed a lot of problems and things going on in the bear reserves that weren't necessarily associated with a legal raccoon hunt. And while it was not something that could be cited, there's no limit currently on the number of dogs you can take in and several other things like that. There were things noticed like scouting for raccoons, which is not generally done for raccoon hunting, and several other things like that, the types of ammunition that was being used, that sort of thing. So we felt like, since it is a bear reserve, it's a time of year when not only bears but a lot of other animals are out there with very little food, and we felt like it was set aside for a certain reason, and the types of activities we saw going on out there were not a good use of that area. The whole rest of the WMA, the rest of the forest is open, so we felt like to raccoon hunting and to bear hunting and to all types of other hunting, which we fully support, and we work with TWRA and the commission on every year, and fully support any kind of legal hunting. That's a good use of the forest. We are a multiple use sustained yield agency, so we not only have to deal with hunters, but people who are trapping, legal trappers at the same time of year, people who are out there hiking, recreationists of all sorts. So we have a lot of different constituents, you might say, that we have to consider, as well as hunting. So that was our basis for our recommendation to TWRA. And we appreciate you all giving us the opportunity to come here and address you all and enjoy a very good working relationship with all the biologists in Region 3 and Region 4, and we're very much appreciative of that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Julie?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Mary and the officers, as well as, to the agency. We're agreed upon that we might be willing to go one more year to try something. And so at the appropriate time, when we make the motions on this proclamation, I'm going to make an amendment to it to have a 4-week season, which would be the whole month of January, with a limit of 2 dogs. Murray thinks we can live with that. The officers, do you believe that we can live with that? We want to give them a little bit of something to be able to put some bite into it, that they can, something they can check. I mean, if people's got more than 2 dogs in the truck, you realize something's up. The other side of that is that, well, you can take 20 trucks and 2 dogs a truck and still do the same thing. But again, this opportunity has extended itself, or will extend itself, for 1 more year. If this gets abused, then this thing will be closed, and the opportunity is going to be over. So I caution all the hunters, be very careful. Use wisely what you've been given to use, and take care of it, because it can be lost in a hurry just because people is abusing this thing. So at the proper time, that's my plan. If there's any discussion upon that, but, we need to talk about it.
Okay, we'll move on that in just a moment. Go ahead, Daryl.
Continuing in Region 3 on their wildlife management areas, there was a couple of changes in Chickamauga with a couple of their units. We're clarifying some things on deer hunting during the waterfowl season. We also were moving the Defeated Creek area into a separate unit on Cordell Hull, which leads us to North Chickamauga Creek in Region 3. And one of the recommendations that we brought forward has caused some discussion, and that was our original recommendation was to close Rogers, Hickson, Vandergriff, and Varner units to all forms of trespass during the late waterfowl seasons. And we've had discussions amongst our staff, and what we'd like to do is amend our original recommendation and come forward with the following. What we want to do is take Hickson unit and Varner unit out of there, and we still recommend closing Rogers and Vandergriff unit for the late waterfowl season. However, the Hickson and Varner tracks would be the same regulations as they were last year. Does anyone have any questions regarding North Chickamauga? All right, we changed, we added a wounded warrior hunt on volunteer Army ammunition plant, which I think is a great move. And then lastly, regarding wildlife management areas in Region 4, we just had a couple of quick changes. North Cherokee, some routine date changes. Chuck Swan, we added some deer hunt restrictions. There's concern about the deer herd in Chuck Swan. And we had some changes to quail regulations on a couple of the Region 4 wildlife management areas. And with that, do you have any questions on the WMA proclamation?
Questions from the commission? When is the, okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Eric, make your motion.
All right, on the proclamation 12-07 on WMA hunting seasons on the Ocoee, and that includes the Tellico Bear Reserve, does it not? I'd like to make an amendment to this proclamation that raccoon season would run from 1st of January to the end of January with a limit of 2 dogs on the reserve. That'd be my motion. I want to really thank the Forest Service for working with us, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to extend this one more year and try to make this work.
Second, any discussion further from the commission? Audience? Yes.
When you say 2 dogs per.
2 dogs, period. Per group.
Per party, per group.
Per party. 2 dogs per party. Yeah.
We need to clarify it.
2 dogs per party.
Per vehicle, per party, what?
Yeah, I would like to request that we have as much clarification as possible so that our law enforcement officers know what to do and they have clear direction. So anything, I don't know if you all want to suggest anything or if anybody else has got a suggestion.
Afternoon. After further discussion, it'd be 2 dogs per vehicle. 2 dogs per vehicle.
2 dogs per vehicle.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Maximum of 2 dogs per vehicle.
All right.
Yeah, I would, I'd restate the motion that the hunting season run the month of January with a limit, maximum of 2 dogs per vehicle.
All right, do we need to second that? All right. Is there any discussion from the audience? All right, those in favor of amending Proclamation 12-7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes carry and the amended proclamation passes. Thank you, Eric.
If you'd like me to continue, the remaining ones should go relatively quickly, or okay. Okay.